Richard Cumber. Now, Richard, let me begin by asking you this. This is the second wave of infections that we have witnessed in Beijing. It appears to be an isolated outbreak right now, but how seriously are the Chinese authorities looking at it?
That's right. I mean, there's very, very detailed analysis going on right now on this this new spread, specifically because it seems to have come specifically, as you mentioned, from this food market, rather like back in Wuhan. And actually the scientists in China that have been studying this have actually said there are more than a few similarities between the new spread and the one in Wuhan some 6 months ago. They've found that they believe that this spread initially from the seafood area of the market and then worked its way through the market into the meat section, both through the lamb and the mutton areas. And they're trying to actually piece by piece work out how the virus can have spread from one part of the market to another, and then of course spread throughout the city. Yesterday they announced that they were using what they called big data to try and specifically work out how anybody who's tested positive for the virus this time has had contact with anybody else, and then immediately be able to identify anybody who's had contact with a positive case and immediately go and test them to find out if they of course are also positive. There's widespread restrictions on travel all around Beijing, but ultimately otherwise the economy is generally functioning as normal, and the authorities are keen to say that they've really got this under control. But there are concerns because new cases are popping up outside of Beijing in neighbouring provinces. And of course, if things were to spread beyond Beijing, which already has 20 million people just in the city there alone, then things could become more serious. But at the moment, it really is still less than 200 cases. And rather than the cases quadrupling every day, it's more a case that the scientists there are beginning to analyse more deeply every day where they believe this strain actually originated.
Absolutely indeed. At this point of time, because initially it was being suggested that it was imported salmon from Germany which may have resulted in this outbreak. At this point of time, have the authorities zeroed in as to what really led to this outbreak? Was it a viral strain that was imported into China, or is it a case where some have said that it is possible that people who have tested positive, who then turn negative, may have tested positive again?
Well, what the scientists said in their statement today, which was quite interesting in terms of just how detailed the statement was, is they said that the genome sequence of the virus this time seems to suggest that it's actually coming from Europe, but that it actually predates the current virus as it's spreading in Europe. And that suggests that this might be that the virus came from China to Europe and has now come back to China again, but actually is the same or a similar type of strain to the one that originally existed in China. Now, they're able to analyse it in such detail that they're starting to question now how the virus is spreading, how old this version of the virus is, and what they're suggesting is that it's possible that a virus from China could have ended up travelling to Europe and then become stored through being exposed to frozen food in a very cold and dark environment, such that it's basically survived until it's ended up back in China. Now, this sounds somewhat complicated, but actually it's this level of analysis that we're now getting from the authorities in Beijing, which is more than we've become used to hearing when we've simply otherwise just been told every day that the cases are increasing. So the amount of scientific data that's being talked about now is really the focus of the communications from Beijing, rather than necessarily talking simply about the number of cases.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Richard Cumber, for joining us from Hong Kong and getting us the latest in terms of this new outbreak that's taken place in China. All right, let's now shift our attention to some other stories now, where German vaccine maker CureVac has started human trials of an experimental vaccine for COVID-19. CureVac is the second company to launch human trials of an experimental coronavirus vaccine in Germany. And reports in German media indicate that we will have early indications about the trial results in about 2 months' time. Germany's economic minister has said that the country will buy a stake in CureVac after reports that the United States was eyeing the firm and also its coronavirus vaccine. The United States was reportedly trying to secure an exclusive right over the vaccine. Though the reports were denied by CureVac and US officials, it spurred the German government into action. Germany has unveiled a plan to invest nearly about 300 million euros in the company for a 23% stake. CureVac, which is a private biotech group, is also planning a listing on the New York-based Nasdaq exchange next month. CureVac was one of the early starters in the vaccine race. As of now, 11 human trials for COVID-19 vaccines are presently underway across the world. Germany has also teamed up with France, Italy and the Netherlands to supply resources for vaccine development programs in Europe.